My guest at this time is Florida Republican Congressman Ted Yoho. He represents Florida's 3rd Congressional District. He's also on both the House Foreign Affairs and Agriculture Committees. He's also on the Western Hemisphere Civilian Security and Trade Subcommittee for the Foreign Affairs panel. And he is the lead sponsor for a new piece of legislation that essentially creates some new rules, new parameters for agricultural guest workers. And Congressman, thanks so much for being with us.
Hey, Greg, thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Well, we obviously have guest worker programs already, and agricultural workers are a big part of that. Talk about your philosophy before we get into some of the specifics here. Why did you decide to tackle this? Why do you think there needs to be these changes to the existing plan?
Because the existing plan is broken, and that's one of the reasons we have such a mess on our immigration. And what I've learned in my 7 years up there is you can't have an immigration debate in Washington. And so we've taken the debate from immigration to really focus on that, a solution to what we need. And we need a guest worker program that'll provide predictable and a steady flow of migrant labor in the areas where we need them. And we're looking at, the lower end skilled works. And I'm focused on the agriculture sector. And so we wanted to have a predictable, reliable, and certain workforce coming in. We wanted a way for the people that want to come in and work in our agriculture sector to be able to come in legally so that they don't have to cross across our southern border illegally and, pay a coyote and risk their family's life at it. And we've accomplished that. So we've solved the problem for our producers, and we've solved the problem for the people wanting to come in and work legally in this country.
One big part of this, though, and it's certainly a big part of what I've seen in your materials here, is making sure this is done in a secure way that protects national security. So explain what you would require guest workers to do once they come in here and looking for jobs in the agriculture sector.
Okay. First, we move ag labor from the Department of Labor to the USDA and let them run this program. People are pre-screened before they come into the country, meaning that, say, if somebody wants to come in from Honduras, we have an agreement between the country of Honduras and our State Department. The country of Honduras will verify this person is who they say they are, basically passport information. And then in addition, they'll have a letter of certification this person's not wanted for drugs, gang member, violent crimes. So we've pre-screened people before they have applied. During the application process, they're the applicant. They don't come into the country until a job is available. But before a job is available, that information goes from the State Department to the Department of Homeland Security, where they do a background check. If they clear that, that information goes to the USDA. When that person comes into the country, they become now a participant when a job is available. They pay a $2,500 fee for a 5-year period of time, meaning they can stay in this country for 5 years at a time. They can renew 4.5 years into it. They have to be a minimum of 18 years of age to apply. They apply individually. They don't apply, and bring a family. And then they get entered, Greg. This is probably the strongest part of this. They get entered into the E-Verify system before they come into the country. So now our employers can take legal workers that are already in the government E-Verify system, and they can utilize the E-Verify system. Right now, we don't have a good way to have enough workers in the E-Verify system. And the last thing is the workers that come in their permit number will have the initials AG for agriculture, meaning they have agreed to come in and work and only work in the agriculture sector.
Congressman, there's also, according to your plan here, a guest worker identification card, which would have some biometric data on there, which would also add a security layer. Talk about that a little bit.
This is what we call the GWIC card, and I appreciate you bringing that up. On the face, it would have it'd be driver's credit card size. It would have the person's picture on that, but it would have a smart chip. Within that smart chip is positive proof that person is who it is. So you can't change the picture on it. You can change that, but you're not going to be able to change the information in the smart chip. It'll have, and we've talked to the Department of Homeland Security, and they said the more biometrics you can put in there, the better. So it'll have anywhere from the fingerprints to retinal scans, facial recognition, DNA they've talked about, and this is all cheap technology that can be embedded in the card. Now, the purpose of this is it not only serves as a work permit, good up to 5 years, provided you abide by our laws, but it also gives positive proof that person is in the country legally. They're allowed to go back home to their country. They have to work a minimum of 75% of the year in our agricultural sector. The other 25%, if they want to stay here, they can. They qualify for no benefits. Taxes will be taken out of their pay like they do now. This gives the person the opportunity to work in America and the flexibility to be able to travel around the country and work at will in the ag sector.
We're talking with Florida Republican Congressman Ted Yoho. Another thing here I see is on the wage front, a lot of times folks who aren't in the country legally end up working, obviously, for a much lower wage, and sometimes they might be in the country legally and end up working for a much lower wage. You address that here. What would be the rules now?
We do. Well, number one, if you use the E-Verify system, people aren't working under the table, so they're going to be paid at a better rate. Number two is the Department of Labor, and this is one of the reasons we wanted to move ag labor from the Department of Labor, will come out arbitrarily and say, well, you've got to raise rates 22% like they did a year ago. What we do is we get rid of the federal mandates and just say it's up to the producer. You have to pay one of the three, 115% of the federal minimum wage or the state minimum wage or the average rate you're paying on the farm. And if an employer is at will, if he's not getting paid enough for his service, he'll go to another farm. And I know the ag committee or community real well, and they're going to pay to keep quality workers because their livelihood is that production, and that production's only good if they can harvest a crop.
Let me ask you about a couple of objections you might get here. One is just the fact that guest workers are coming in huge numbers to do all this work. The line that we often hear is, well, they're doing the jobs that Americans won't do or can't do. And so what are the facts when it comes to the number of agricultural jobs that Americans can fill and how many folks we need from outside the U.S. to complete it?
Right. Right now we've got a mixed bag. And again, it goes back to our broken immigration system. We hear the phrase all the time, we've got 10 to 12 million people here illegally. What we do is, again, an employer has to advertise a job like they do now, so they're going to continue to have to do that for domestic help. When domestic help doesn't show up, this job opening will go to an individual that wants to come in as a guest worker. When they're in the E-Verify system, we know how many people are in the country. We know where they're at. And it's not to spy on people. It's to keep track of a labor inventory so that we know how many people we need to add to the system. Again, it goes back to, like the producer told me, we're either going to import our labor or we're going to import our food. And this goes back to the national food security issue. If we can't grow our own fruits and vegetables in here, then we have to start importing that.
Congressman, the immigration debate has gotten more polarized over time. It's at the point now where it's not just whether or not we have a border wall, it's whether or not ICE and the Customs and Border Patrol should even exist. So what reaction are you getting from Democrats on this? I would imagine that at some point even National E-Verify is getting a little bit controversial. So what's the feedback been like?
It is. We have sat down, Greg, with over 60 members. They like the common sense of this bill. We've sat with industry. Industry likes the common sense of this bill. And now it's just getting people to sign on. We've got a bipartisan group is supporting this bill. We've got a lot of the industry behind our bill. And this is a bill that politics shouldn't be played in. This is a bill that provides guest workers. It gives people a way to be in this country legally. If a person has come into this country illegally, we allow that person, if they've been working into ag, to apply to this business or to apply to this program. They would pay a $2,500 fine acknowledging that they came into our country illegally. But then once they get cleared through the Department of Homeland Security, they can qualify for this 5-year permit. It is not a pathway to citizenship. It just says that you came in illegally. You paid the fine. Now you can work here legally. And if they want to become a citizen, they apply like anybody else. So it's a win for America. It's a win for our producers, and it's a win for the worker that wants to play by the rules.
Congressman, we'll be watching. Thanks very much for your time today. We appreciate it.
Greg, I appreciate it. Have a great day and have a wonderful Thanksgiving.
Same to you, sir. Thanks very much. Florida Republican Congressman Ted Yoho represents his state's 3rd Congressional District. He's also on the House Foreign Affairs and Agriculture Committees. I'm Greg Columbus reporting for Radio America.